I was letting my dogs out to go to the bathroom before I left for work. It was roughly 3:30 a.m. I drive an hour to work and get there by 5, so that's why I wake up so early. All was quiet and peaceful. I heard a howl off in the tree line. Then, about 5 minutes later, I heard off in the distance something I had never heard before. I hear coyotes all the time. I've heard a bobcat screaming before, but this was far different. It sounded like it was quite always off, whatever it was, but sounded very big and very deep. The only way I can think to explain the noise was like a big burly man yelling, "Ah!" for about 5 to 10 seconds long. Then nothing else. It caused a neighbor dog down the road to begin barking, but didn't seem to faze my own dogs. The direction that noise came from is about 2 to 3 miles of combinations of timber and farmland. Then it becomes a big river bottoms in the Grand River. I don't think whatever made the noise was 2 to 3 miles away, maybe a mile at most. I have never heard anything like that before in my life, and I've been a very outdoorsy guy the entirety of my life. I've watched different Bigfoot shows and have heard vocalizations on them, and that's the closest thing I could think of what this sounded like. However, I feel like recorded things on TV doesn't give you the same feel or power this thing seemed to have. I mean, it sent chills down my spine. It would have been closer. I definitely would have gone inside for a gun. No joke. The sighting was witnessed by my brother and a friend. My brother told me of this sighting shortly after it had happened in the winter of 1992. He has retold it to me a few times over the years, most recently on New Year's Eve, 98. The story is always the same and never changes. My brother was in high school at the time and had been at a party. The party was supervised by parents at a friend's house, so no drinking involved. His friend was driving the family in van. After the party, the two boys drove a girl home that lived west of Columbus and the Youth Camp Road area. Again, this is in Indiana. After dropping the girl off, the boys proceeded east on the road, back towards State Road 46. My brother states that something crossed the road, roughly 50 to 80 yards in front of the van. He claims it walked out of the woods on the left side of the road, crossed the road, and entered the woods again on the right. His claim is that the headlights caught a glimpse of it as this thing was re-entering the woods on the right side of the road. He claimed it was completely white and furry. He said that they drove for about 5 minutes in silence without ever stopping. After about 5 minutes, my brother's friend said, "What was that?" And my brother said, "I don't know." I was afraid to say anything because I thought it might have just been my imagination. According to my brother, this is the exact dialogue spoken, verbatim. He said it was big, tall, and covered in white fur. He told me that he didn't see it clear enough to tell if it was Bigfoot-like or humanoid, although he said it was roughly 6 feet tall and walking upright on 2 legs. I was 18 and a senior at Columbus East High School at this time period. There is a park directly across the street from my house. It was a warm spring night. I was doing a report for school, and it was getting rather late. I was the only person still up at the time. I was, to my best guess, 1:30 a.m. I had just broken my last pencil, and I needed another one to finish my report. I had to go outside to get to my car to get one. I had just shut the door to my truck to go back inside when I hear the most god-awful shrill scream in my life. Turning around quickly, I can make out this vague outline of a large man-like creature running through the park and back into the woods. The scream lasted for roughly 6 seconds. And needless to say, I hightailed it back into the house. I explained to my parents in the morning. They said they had heard nothing, and that all I heard was probably a cat. Well, the next day, I pulled up a Bigfoot website and listened to some WAV files, and the sounds that I heard were identical to what I had heard the previous night. I was walking our puppy at 2:30 a.m., puppy training. We live directly across from Camp Atterbury, which is heavily wooded on our side. We also share it with Brown County State Park and Yellowwood. I was basically stargazing. I hear a loud howl-type sound, and I've never heard it before. I grew up here, so I know what coyotes, wolves, foxes, owls, and even bobcats sound like. This was not any of those. I have never heard the sound from here. There was one short howl, and it sounded like it was right in front of me. I mean, no more than 140 feet. I moved a few paces to my right, and again, I heard the howl in front of me, as if it moved to the right with me. This time, after the second howl, there was about 4 or 5 short hoops after it. By that time, I was now really freaked out and ran back to my house. My husband and I rented a cabin in Nashville. We had just come down for a year to Indiana. Well, about 11 p.m., we went to bed. Within minutes, our dogs went nuts. My husband got up to check, opening the front door of the cabin. It is covered by a porch, and it was raining pretty hard. The porch light did not work, so it was pretty dark. He closed the door and told me to bring a flashlight and a firearm. I ran out of bed, went to him by the door. He said something was breathing heavy on the porch to the left of the door. At this point, it occurred to me that our dogs were strangely silent, being Akitas that have seen bear, wolf, coyote, and lynx all up close in Alaska. This was not normal behavior. My husband slowly opened the door again, and I was sure enough, something was breathing very heavy to just open the side of the door. It also smelt. It was really strong, musky, mixed with soggy old carpet and wet dog. We closed the door again while we chambered around, and I lit the flashlight. We did a tactical to the left, where we heard the sound. It was gone, but wet footprints that looked like they were made with soggy, fuzzy bedroom slippers were across the floor. It had come across our front lawn and up the right side of the porch, across the door to the other side where we had heard it. The prints were close together while passing the first window, and the door, when it fled, it did it in one step. The footprints were a lot larger than my foot in slippers, which is a woman's 9.5 wide. I wondered if it realized what chambering around meant, since we had opened the door twice and it stayed, breathing heavy, right on the other side, right to the side where we couldn't see it. Dogs didn't scare it, and us two talking didn't scare it. That would indicate it had human interaction, maybe with hunters before. Not uncommon with bears in Alaska. A lot of people will chamber around, not wanting to hurt it, but ready to if it gets aggressive. They are smart and learn fast what that sound is. Another strange thing is that the dogs just paced around all night. They did not do this after confronting an 800-pound brown bear in Alaska. Literally. They worked together and chased all the above away from around the home. We lived in a cabin off the grid. Not sure if we have a stinky homeless person wearing bedroom slippers living in the woods, but it was very strange, and my husband was a career ranger. No one to let his imagination run wild. We were stumped. The dogs, 2 of them, pooped in the cabin. Something dogs are known to do when frightened, and these dogs are well housebroken. While backpacking near the horse trails and Access Point in the county below Brown County, I experienced a confrontation with a bipedal primate. It was early March of 1998, and I was all alone. Around 7 o'clock in the evening, after hiking several miles, I set up camp in a wooded area, about 100 yards from the horse trail. Darkness was descending quickly, so I was in a rush to set up camp and prepare my supper. After gathering firewood and getting my fire started for light and cooking, I suddenly began hearing leaves and brush rustling below me and to the east along a ravine that I camped above. At that moment, I thought to myself that it just was a bit early for mushroom hunters, and probably too dark for them to see any. Perhaps it's a deer. Anyway, I grabbed my knife for protection, grabbing the flashlight cautiously, and approached the ravine where the noises were coming from. I yelled out in the direction of the sounds and aimed my flashlight. To my astonishment, I viewed a very tall, upright, human-looking being hiding behind a clump of trees close to the stream. The creature stood about 7 feet tall, as I could see his silhouette from the left side of the trees. He was leaning forward and exposing his head to view me. He, or it, was approximately 40 feet from my position, and the light from my flashlight shined into its eyes. I could see that he had dark hair covering his cone-shaped head, and dark eyes in the front of his skull. I knew immediately that this couldn't be a man. Now I was very frightened, yelling out again in hopes of scaring it off. It ran into the stream and away from me, from about 6 feet before ducking behind another tree. I continued to follow him with my flashlight, screaming at him with threats. Now, this went on for 2 to 3 minutes before he took off running down the creek again, out of sight. The rest of the night, I stayed awake near my campfire, fearing a return visit, waiting for daylight to return to my truck. I would have packed out that night, only my truck was in the direction that the hairy biped fled, and I was miles in. This entire situation was very frightening to me. I always thought that if Bigfoot existed, it would be in the Cascades or the Canadian Rockies. I never would have imagined it being here. Scary,